This is what's called in the business a problem. Fine, Shave, you're fine. Check if you're muted. Happens all the time. That is also a fun thing.
Okay, should be coming through now. Sorry about that, folks. Like I said, you didn't hear it, but I said I'm dumb, so I'll say it again for you. So welcome to Chip Off the Block. So this is Wednesday show that I'll be doing indefinitely with Omni. Sometimes we'll have Derek pop in. Derek is going to be a tentative guest. But Chip Off the Block is where we're going to recap and review the previous episode, and then after we're done recapping and reviewing, take requests from the audience. So if you have any great ideas, and I'm sure you have a lot of them, be sure to have them ready to post, because we will be spending about half an hour reviewing the first episode, talking about what we did, and then we'll spend the next hour taking requests. Let's...
And don't mind me, I'm also logging into Twitch right now, just so I can engage with chat too.
Praise it all, man.
There we are.
So I appreciate you, Alex. What's up, Gemma? Nice to see you.
Gemma!
DC,
hey.
Glad to have you. Long time no see. See? Coin, thanks for stopping by, man. Who else we got? That's got right now.
I'm gonna mute my my Twitch audio because it's echoing endlessly.
Oh lord.
Oh god.
I love that. I love the infinite hall corridor.
It wouldn't bug me. It wouldn't bug me, except it's trying to speak over it, man. Oh, hey, that's not gonna happen. Not at all.
So,
that was a 2-second experiment I don't need the answer to.
D-Red, you're not the only one that flubs audio. Somebody that's supposed to be a self-proclaimed voice actor, not very good with audio live. I can do it when I'm not on camera pretty well.
I'm just gonna say most voice actors don't set up their own audio equipment at a studio, usually. In my experience.
I should just stick to audio.
So, nah, your voice is too silky smooth to leave it bottled up, buddy.
Oh, so saith you.
Of course.
Sorry, folks.
Talent must recognize talent.
Oh, yeah.
And ego must not exist in this space.
Sorry, folks, we're just buttering each other. Previous session, we, like I said, we introduced the sort of rules for the show. Big book of rules, which are not very big at all. Omni and I each bring on our own 3 words, and then our 2 guests will bring on their 3 words. These are completely secret words. They choose words. The prompt that I give them is, you pick 3 words that you think would inspire creative thoughts, or you think they would be good for world building. Come on. We drop these words in the beginning, and we go from there. So, Omni and I, for the first episode, it was just him and I. So we did, his words were stellar cartography, heathers, nebula. We got to all of those. My words were expansion, zealotry, and underestimate. The word that we didn't get to is underestimated, so we will be going over that one today. But regardless, we will talk about the work that we did previously, and notice I said recap and review. So we're going to recap what we did, and we're going to review it, see if any of it's crap, and then we'll get you. So that's kind of the idea. Don't worry, folks. We are, as humans, our own biggest critics. Except for me, I'm Omni's biggest critic. So I'm going to be...
I can't criticize you. You're too beautiful.
Oh, you're too kind. You're the one that takes the grade. So let's... I have a Google Doc. We have a Google Doc. We have a Google Doc that we'll be sharing with guests. And so as you can see before you, zealotry, we sort of had this idea that we have 2 communities minimum. There will be much more than communities. I don't like the versus blue. overdone, oversaturated. In Halo, Team Fortress 2, any form of simple media, dark versus light. I don't like those things. They're very too black and white. I like them more. So even the bad guys can do good things, right? And then we talked about domestication of magic. I'm not sure who mentioned that, but it was a really cool idea. The idea of sort of having like cowboys that herd magic, or that's sort of how the wizards being placeholder, I think will come up. Omni and I could.
Oh, absolutely. Just it'll take a little bit as well.
Nebulons. So workshop it. Yeah, definitely workshop it. Thanks, bud. Tether, we use that word for magic. So what we have for that is a Omni actually made an illustration of it. I don't want to say drew a picture. That's fucking shot. Illustrated.
It's drawing a picture. It's fine. I'm not offended.
But
it's fine.
Illustrating sounds so much more professional.
It does until you realize that illustrating requires specific tools, and I don't have an illustrating program on here. I only have a photo program. So I can't... Digital paint, I guess? See, this is why I just say drawing a picture. It's much easier. If I say, I'm rasterizing a picture, everyone turns off.
Omni drew a pretty picture that we're going to put up on Twitch. It depicts a fellow activating his magic, channeling it. So what we had is we had a weird sort of thing where we came to like umbilical magic. So what the body is sort of like a conduit for the magic, and what they do is they release this ether, magic being somewhere in the atmosphere. Magic's mysterious. Not much is known about it. We are in the first frontier of understanding magic with this world, which is called Eos, which we came up with.
Picture up to the writer's block file. There you go, if you want it.
Gotcha. Okay, so folks, you can see this on stream. This is really... I love concept art. Let's see. Oh god, makes me think of those, you die there as a giant. What is leaking through the living room?
God, okay, I think I know what you're talking about. I just can't remember the name. God help me. I'll remember it later, Bond, I promise.
Actually, I'll have to figure. So this is the,
it's Death Stranding. It's Death Stranding.
Death Stranding, duh. Okay, yeah, we were literally talking about it. So there's tethers, but not tethers to, like, life and death. There's tethers to magic. There could be tethers to life. We haven't discussed. I don't want to say no. I mean, this is a show about improv, and it's about writing.
Yeah.
Got a lot of yes and in here. So let's see. We left off on the tethers. We were talking about how we created tether. We had Nebula. Derek, nice to have you, man. We had Nebula, so we did like nebulous magic. So magic sort of looks like a weird amalgamation of stars. We don't really want to get too technical with the magic because I like soft magic, but I like soft magic, hard magic casting. So like, you know what your magic is capable of, but you don't know what the magic itself. You know what you're able to do. Lord of the Rings, you know, you have Gandalf who like has certain spells that he can cast, but they're whimsical, soft, so you don't really understand how they. So that nebulous magic appears as, like I said, amalgamation of stars. Think Color of Outer Space by H.P. Lovecraft. Like I said, we're on the first frontier of understanding. The few people that know about magic are definitely doing the best they can to control it. Hence the super mages that sort of have like a small yet huge grasp on magic, enough to...
Yeah, well, I think we said we were building up to that. Or like the idea is that they could easily go down the exact same path that led them to that first apocalypse, just do it again. But whether they're like capable of that level of it or not, immediately, it's probably a no. It's one of those like, we wonder how it's going to be in 10 to 20 years. And Dr. Manhattan goes, I can't see 10 to 20 years in the future. I wonder why not. And everyone else is like, think we know.
There's not.
Yeah. So I think that was part of it. But yeah, like there's not really any, like a lot of the classic traditional perceptions of like high fantasy magic with like the most aged ancient wizards. The ancient plus wizard is not really, that doesn't work in this setting.
It's the antithesis
Yeah, there's not really like you can't have ancient archmages or folks who've been doing magic since the dawn of time. Like they're probably most of these wizards are probably within like this or the last couple generations at most. So about as ancient as our understanding of the radio wave, or
Yeah,
like the short wave radio, basically.
and in that regard, a lot of the majors are going to be very young. We had that sort of discussion about longbowmen and how they start training about the age of like 5, 6, and 7. So what they're doing when they're training in the like longbowmen in 15th, 14th century Britain,
Hmm.
they would start training at like very, very young ages. Literally every day after church, they would go out and shoot bow. And what they'd be doing is they'd be sort of reforming their muscular strength to be like more adapted to shooting said bow. That's why the English longbow was so feared. Not just the fact that the thing existed, it's just that the longbowmen were but that's kind of what we're doing with magic. So you need to start using magic at a very, very young age so you can sort of meld your body to become. So that's sort of what we discussed. I don't like
And
getting in.
depending on how you do it, it probably takes a toll on you.
Oh, yeah.
Like whether or not you're even debatably, like I guess, human or like humanoid at the end of it. That's a big shrug, honestly. Like who knows? You might be sentient. You might be sentient light by the time you're done with this. So, which would be kind of cool, but I can't imagine it'd be good for settling down and finding a family and paying taxes.
Having a light kid.
Yeah. Good luck riding a horse as sentient light, or high-fiving anyone ever again.
Oh, you haven't watched enough.
Okay, that's fair. Doing so without causing an level apocalypse, I suppose.
So yeah, Omni was talking about like quid pro quo-esque magic, a little tit for tat. So in the Darkers, you're giving up a part of yourself to learn this magic. More often than not, when you're a mage, when you become a wizard, quote unquote, at a young age, you're not really doing that by you have a certain gift for it, and you're being expert. It's altering, basically. I mean, you're in an apocalyptic world. There's fucked up shit. Let's be quite honest. But
right.
In no way am I glowing. I'm not. It's in the same
Neither of
way.
us are.
Yeah.
This isn't like this isn't Halo, where the first game is like, wow, look how awesome Super Soldier is, and then Halo 2 is like, hey, you want to know how we got those awesome super soldiers? And you're like, I wish you had led with that.
Yeah, see,
I wouldn't have cheered on the idea of making more Master Chiefs if I knew they were abducted kindergartners. That maybe is a little bit less. That's not a spoiler, by the way, folks. That's literally a thing almost a decade old.
It's over a fucking decade. So,
yeah.
Yeah, we don't want to. It's kind of like how Warhammer is. They glorify the hell out of it. I love Warhammer. They glorify the hell out of the Imperium, but they're super fast. So.
Oh, yeah. They're literally the fascist faction that the only reason they're the good guys is because the rest of the universe is comparatively even more crapsack, if that's possible. And the only way to do that is to make literally almost every adversary going to immediately eat you, annihilate you from space, torture you for infinity, despite the laws of physics, be so old as to view you as literally dust bunnies to blow away from behind their refrigerator, or actual demons. It's literally it. So, as a Space Marine player, I love us guys, but man, we are not the good guys. Just letting y'all know.
The only Space Marines that are good guys are the Salamanders. But anyway, we're not
I
gonna.
mean, yeah.
We're not
anyway,
gonna go down that.
You're right. Already did.
So Ami and I also talked about the vigorous training required. So Ami and I were talking about how wizards and sorcerers, stuff like that, compared to martial in a lot of cases. It's just like wizards are like, I read a lot. Sorcerers are like, I was born. And fighters are like, I have literally spent a decade fighting, surviving, and killing people to learn my technique and to get good at them. Because let's be quite honest, in the real world, the best, like the masters of swords, they're the ones that survived. And they learned from their mistakes, and they were lucky enough to survive. to write manuals and stuff like that. That is how magic is going to be handled in said universe. So what we'll be having is we'll have very, very young masters, probably about 16, 17 years old, and a lot of them will be just burning out by the fact, because you know, the more you consume magic, the more it consumes you. It's like what the Hawaiians call pineapple, the fruit that eats you whilst you eat. It's delicious and it's incredibly sweet, and it feels great to have all this power, but power comes at a serious price. So more often than not, these don't live very.
It probably doesn't hurt the fact that the nations that utilize mages probably value them far more as a strategic resource, so than they do as people. So it would not, you know, it's the soldier's paradox. It's, we don't want boys coming home in body bags, but we are more than willing to expend literally every one of your lives to take this hill if it's important enough.
Yeah,
and so
soldiers are significantly more expendable than, say, for the obvious reason that wizards take a decade to train, and even then, sometimes they die. You gotta be very careful with that. Magic chaos system in The Witcher, sort of. Yeah, I'd say, I'd draw more parallels to the warp. I don't want to make this whole like Warhammer, but like wild magic and the wild magic, but like more, instead of casting polymorph on yourself, it'd be a lot more of casting fireball centered on you. There's a lot of downsides to magic in this universe, and most of the magic is, yes, you could be a nobody and try to harness this very powerful spell, but it will kill you. It's that the training is what, it's sort of body temperament, sort of training your body to be resilient enough to stuff, but you're not guaranteed.
I was actually thinking about this over the past couple of days since we had our stream, and so I was thinking back, like, is there many good comparisons to the type of magic we're talking about? Besides the obvious Death Stranding because of tethers, and 40k because magic is not just unstable, but unfriendly and actually a source of corruption and potential destruction.
Yeah.
Beyond all of that, there's one particular place I thought of immediately that was like, that's the closest I can think of to, like, the level of magic we're talking here. And this is going to be a bit of a weird one, but for all you folks out there in internet land, if any of you have watched the Netflix movie Bright, I know there's a lot of opinions about that one way or another. I enjoyed it, but I understand entirely people don't. 100%. Just letting you know. There's no judgment either way. But one of the things they do fantastically well in that movie is drive home how dangerous magic is. Like, just trying to take a wizard's wand will just obliterate you if you're not if you're not capable of wielding magic. There's a line in the movie in particular that just stuck with me, and I was like, that sounds right for this. And it's one of the guys is talking about, like, they found a magic wand, and he's like, okay, we just got to stash it and we'll come back for it because there's a bunch of heat on us. And he's like, we're not leaving that behind. That's like a nuke that grants wishes. If we let that go and it gets into the hand of some gangbanger, LA is going to be in flames by the end of the evening. All of it. And that's if we're lucky. And so, like, it's that same level of power. This kind of magic is the sort of thing that, if not properly used, like a miscast, if that's even possible because of the method and type of magic we're talking about, if that happens, we're not talking like, oh, that hurt my arm, or I guess my power turns off for a bit, or like you said, polymorph into like a sheep for 5 minutes or something, called Warcraft. Like, no, this is everyone within 30 feet of me is transmuted to solid jade, and everyone beyond that is half calcified. Or like, I snap my fingers, gravity reverses within a quarter mile and sends hundreds of people to their deaths without any control. Like, this is the kind of thing, this is the reason probably why we developed the idea of, like, magical jousting, where before the battle is even joined by mages, they're just sitting outside of it, trying to shut each other down, knowing if they went in guns blazing, then it probably one of the two of them is probably the only one walking off that battlefield to not turn into a living statue or a colony of like sentient aphids or something.
And that's such a cool image. So, folks, let's paint a picture. You have a large, sort of open battlefield, like a gulch. And atop these two cliffs, there's one a little bit higher, against this orange-brown sky. There's two people just sort of sitting. They have long, weird, ethereal-looking lights, but they're not quite lights, because they're not straight. They're sort of jagged and reaching towards the sky. And as this battle's commencing, these two are just sitting. You can't tell exactly what's going on, but they are just sitting there. As if they are just quiet and silent gods observing the destruction that... That's a duel, a typical duel with wizards in this. They start with that. And the idea is whoever severs the tether first is going to be the one ultimately.
Pretty much, yeah. And I genuinely like the idea that you have an overarching general and there's two lieutenants, and one lieutenant's actually coordinating the battle, and the other lieutenant's job is to sit by the mage and watch as he does his thing and relay to the general, like, I don't know, man, it's not looking good over here. Or I think he might have it. Okay, good, he has it. We can unleash him now. And the general's like, cool, pull our troops back, they're dead. And that's like that's how the battle might go. It's tough. It's a really interesting kind of dichotomy. Again, these aren't your walk through the crowd kind of wizards. This is the bomb that you drop at the end of a battle when you're pretty sure the battle can't be won by manpower, or you just don't want to commit troops anymore.
I'm gonna show you something.
Yeah.
We had a prompt. Ghost at his sort of mercy, watch over the and sort of just have to live it, you know, and he just can't sort of leave. And we named him Ur is up to interpretation. He's an arcane
interpretation,
ghost.
Clearly.
Interpreted. He's an arcane ghost that might have not even existed to begin with. Sort of just it's a tether. There's that word again. To the old world, like what everything was before. People widely regard this arcane spirit as this the first wizard or the apocalypse. And these people, these religious fanatics, are the ones that attempt to sort of understand magic and understand They don't have any of his teachings. More often than not, they're just interpreting what he did in life, or what they believe he did in life.
Right.
Wow. That could get very, very political and religious, so I'm not going to go any further.
I mean, that's kind of the thing, though, right?
We're
good
interpreting
art,
what somebody did.
Yeah, good art echoes reality at least a little bit, and that's as much as I'm going to say on that insanely hot button topic. But yeah, no, and I do like the idea that even if they were able to get a real sit down with the man himself, the being, the weird gelatinous semi-real version thing, ghost angel that would be assuming they even exist, and they were to get straight answers out of somehow, pretty sure half of them would be like, I don't know, bro, that was thousands of years ago. Do you remember what you ate for breakfast like 3 weeks ago?
Yeah, exactly.
Try asking me what I was doing 10 million years in the past. I don't know.
We actually missed one of like the biggest points. We are in a post-apocalyptic science fantasy set. So low tech, almost said low tech high life. That's like the opposite of cyberpunk, high tech low. So we're a low tech sort of mixture of magic. This is a low magic setting because it's low magic in the sense that there is a lot of magic that can't be accessed. It doesn't really have an effect on daily lives like you would think it. It's not technology significantly more accessible than magic. Because like I said, those lucky, quote unquote, lucky few that are able to get their hands on magic are very devastating, horrifying weapons. Not the kind of magic that you ever on. Wave your hand. Feel like glass. It's you wave a hand, level
Yeah.
but
This is the nuclear power of magic, folks. Technically, it's usable. Technically, society has access to it. Technically, you have access to it every time you turn on your PC or whatever if you have a nuclear power plant anywhere near you. It doesn't mean you are personally splitting the atom or qualified to. And if you do it wrong, then everyone in the Tri-County area gets an alert on their phone to go a couple 100 miles the other way. Same thing with magic in this instance, I'd figure.
Soul said, is red cutting out for anyone else?
That was a little bit loud for me. But I don't know whether I can tell them there.
I just turned it up a little bit.
Yeah, that's better. That's a little better.
That should be that should be capping at
seems
cutting, but it seems intermittent.
That's strange.
Let me know if the issue persists, and I'll take a look at it. I did have to mute my mic just for like a second not too long ago, so that might have had something to do with it. Thank you. So yeah, we were talking about the mutually assured destruction magic early. You can cut the volume back down. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that should be better.
It's a little bit.
That should like cap it like -20.
Yeah.
Am I coming through clear for you?
Oh, easily. Yeah, I can hear you fine and dandy.
Okay.
Yeah, it was definitely an explosion of volume there. From there, I was like, I'm going to dial that down a little. But yeah, it's really tough. Yeah, you're right, Bond. Balance is insanely hard to manage. It is. There's a reason why the big streams have teams of engineers working behind the scenes because, folks, this is television, but we're doing it through a PC, and we have two people, one person actually, because this guy's the one who's doing it, not me. I don't have control of this at all.
I'm doing my
and
best.
he's doing great. He's doing great. Straight up. So
I hope I'm not cutting out too bad to the point where you can't like hear what I'm saying. Folks in chat, let me know. We'll take a break. I'll see what I can do to fix things. It might have been me moving away from the mic and stuff like that. I'll try to stay. I'm jittery. I have ADHD.
It could also just be simple internet latency issues as well. If you guys are getting any chopping, restart your browser. Let us know if that helps, because that happens to me sometimes as well. Twitch isn't the kindest thing. Yeah. So.
I'm also recording on OBS, so that might be causing some latency.
That might be it.
It wasn't just you cutting out. I don't know if it's. Okay.
Oh, it wasn't just us. Okay, that's interesting.
Oh, so this might be a Twitch problem.
Yeah.
Because I'm looking at my levels, everything's going through just fine.
It happens. It could even be just simple. It could be IP problems too. I know I've had that happen where, for some reason, I'll just call them out because I don't think we're going to get a sponsorship. Spectrum decides that they're going to throttle my internet for no reason. They're like, "Hey, you want to go back to the 1980s?" And I'm like, "Yeah, but not in that way." And also, probably not in retrospect. The 1980s only had some cool movies, but that was it. So yeah, no. It can be rough out there, folks. If you guys are getting any chopping or anything, I reiterate, restart your browser, try to reload the page, see if that helps. That'll help me occasionally. If it's continuing, let us know. We'll do our best. But yeah, it might just be Twitch. It happens occasionally.
Not currently having any problems from Naris. It might be, there's a lot of winds and
yeah.
I'm praying there's no tornadoes for you. But we've had 40, 45 miles all day.
Oh yeah, Emily just mentioned that. It's a weather problem. That is true. There is, I think it's the whole Midwest right now, basically.
Yeah.
Like the Midwest to the Northeast is just...
Probably
everyone keep an eye on the Weather Channel.
Yeah, like 2 hours from here, like to the north, there's a tornado. Thank God I'm not in that area, but I'm hoping those people... But, I don't mean
Meanwhile, Florida is weirdly quiet. First time ever.
You're not in hurricane season.
Yeah.
Knock on wood. But let's get back to the show.
Yeah.
I don't want
Angry public health noises from Solus.
Angry public. Absolutely.
Oh God. Yeah. So, like you said, we were talking about and then the mutually assured. I think we started the mutually assured destruction via magic thing.
Yeah, we were talking about how these nations, be it the nation of religious folk, pious folk, like that, and more people that are more secular, more worried about technology. They're sort of these are the two nations we have now. Like I said, it's not going to be red versus blue. It's not going to be black and white. It's going to be morally gray. There's going to be a lot of people that live between these. It's like Ravnica. You don't have to be with the guild, and the people that live between the guilds are often at the, they're often at disposal by. They're sort of caught in the crossfire. So none of the guilds are technically good. They all get in other people's ways and infringe upon their freedoms.
Everyone loves the Boros Legion until they come trampling down your street with a Minotaur at the front, chasing after some guy who stole like $20 worth of bread, and he destroys your whole family's life savings by smashing through your shop. So
I was about to say everybody loves the Azorius Senate, but nobody does.
Nope, that's canon.
I like Blue White, but I honestly the best guild to be in probably Selesnya Conclave.
Yeah, they seem pretty chill.
They're the most peaceful. Reserved. If you're not into that, you could always go Gruul. Anyway, so is this arcane ghost, like we were talking about. Probably, he might have not existed. This nation of religious folk, pious folk, sort of interpret what he did in life. And if they do exist, people that say that they have encountered them, a lot of people had different opinions. They is this genderless thing, is a man, is a woman. They're gender fluid. They're either or any at all. But regardless, people say that when they've encountered them, they are aloof. They're sort of cold and distant. They don't really like interacting with the world. They're bitter about it, for obvious reasons. Now, the problem in that is you have all these people interpreting, quote unquote, and in reality, this figure could give a shit less. There's my cuss word. Give a shit less about the actual world, because it's not their world anymore. Understand? It's this weird. It's this weird.
A little bit less
image.
like you, Bon. He's a little bit more of a dick. You're actually nice. So
he's a dick. He's sort of the kind that's just like, well, not my problem. That classic sort of like, oh, it's not my problem. Ain't that America? But yeah, but he comes from this city that we were talking about. It's like sort of surrounded by a magical radiation sort of fallout from the city, and there's people that are like runners that attempt to go into this city, get anything they possibly can, and leave. Nobody's ever returned. So as Omni put it, they're speedrunning life, trying to recover artifacts from one of the few standing cities left in the wasteland of Chaos. So, that being said, I think we did a decent recap.
Honestly, yeah, you nailed pretty much most of the talking points. Honestly, I think that's it.
Okay, if you think that's it, we can move on to the one word that we didn't cover, which is underestimated.
Yeah, down with that.
That could mean a lot. So underestimated is the word we didn't get to, and what do we do with that? That is a very broad word.
So, man, that is a tough one. I think it's one of those things that's best used as broadly as it, like, using it for specific things might be a bit too much. I like the idea of using it, like everything else so far, to broadly describe a large portion of the setting.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, the idea being that this magic is still relatively new, and many nations totally understand the implication. I imagine there are some nations that don't, or actively avoid it. And I'm sure there are many folks in the Commons who might not be aware of this magic, in the same way that I'm sure a lot of folks didn't realize, and still don't realize, how dangerous modern military equipment is. Like, guys, there's a bomb that literally drops blades that scythe out everything within like 50 meters. It's nuts. So I figure it's the same sort of thing. and then you could have nations that are also underestimated. So maybe just something that's applied as a broad overarching tone, or a broad overarching term, a recurring theme in the setting, where it's like there is always some factor somewhere it's being underestimated. Someone's thinking the impact of mages isn't going to be as extreme as it is. Someone thinking that this small nation's not going to be as pivotal because they don't have as many mages. Some people thinking that, oh, they're just a bunch of crazy religious zealots in their own little city, sending the guy in the run to the nuclear reactor core to get useless tomes, and not realizing there's something terrible brewing there. I think that's an ignorance. Maybe reading it as ignorance is a better way of putting it. Perhaps.
Yeah, I'd say ignorance is underestimation does come from ignorance. Sort of the whole uh, the saying of "don't underestimate your enemy." You're safer overestimating them, expecting the absolute worst rather than less. So I like the idea of it's also easy to misinterpret a thing when you are ignorant of its history. That is completely true. Yeah, I mean, let's look at there's a lot of giant conflicts that people don't realize. I mean, the one that's coming to mind is the Mongolians versus the Chinese. People are like, well, how are these like marauding nomads able to take on like a stable, like, just stay put sort of nation? A nation that's literally just not moving. Like, how are these nomads able to do that with like these resources that they don't really have? It's all about tactics, because when you underestimate your enemy, you're going to let your guard down. I mean, they literally built the Great Wall of China to specifically combat the Mongolians. That's what a great threat these people were.
Not to mention also, like, it's a simple matter of relative power as well. Like, China can have as many archers or as many swordsmen as it likes across the whole of China. China is also one of the largest nations on Earth, physical landmass, and they're not going to bring 16 million archers into one place in a realistic time frame. The Mongols could totally bring the equal number of men on horseback with cavalry sabers versus the poor beleaguered footmen that they're going to be fighting. Because that's all they need. They just need to have as many forces as they can bring realistically to a battlefield, not more than the enemy has overall.
Exactly, and you got to think about a lot of the Chinese peasantry would be the ones called into battle. So what you're doing is like, you got to keep in mind how large farmland is. You could be literally a half an hour walk away from your next neighbor. So could you imagine being part of a military recruiting group, going to have to like walk between these places or go on horseback, probably about 10 minutes between these places to gather up all these people? That would take forever. It's they obviously didn't go back and forth. They probably have like some sort of device, like something like
or banners. Simple as just the banner walks past town, demands you walk with him. Gather your militia, gather your swords, come with us, drop whatever you're doing. The kingdom needs you. And
Bond said it's also the fact that in certain parts, Mongolian conquered areas had more freedom than they did under the then ruling government body. Exactly. So Mongolians not only were like this incredibly strong military force, they were also offering something that people didn't have. It's the sort of like, we won't kill you, we won't do all these horrible things to you if you just sort of pledge your allegiances elsewhere. It's not like you have anything to lose. It's
not like you're going to even notice. Yeah. The average peasant in that era is going to be on their is probably going to be in their farm or on their lands for the bulk of their time, and probably almost never see hide nor tail save the taxman of their kingdom. All it's going to change is the clothing the taxman is going to wear, if even that, because it might even be the same taxman just collecting for a different empire, because he took the deal too. Literally nothing might change. Like there's a reason why, and a lot of people will look at the Sengoku Jidai in Japan or the hundreds of wars that occurred in Europe over its medieval period, and they'll go, how disruptive would that have been to live in? And actually, not really.
Not at all.
The average citizen literally might not realize their nation had fallen until a new tax guy arrives and says, by edict of the King of England, they're like, actually, we're in France. And they're like, oh, no, you're not. We totally took that shit over. Like, this whole region is technically Britain for the moment. Not sure how long that's going to last, but in the meantime, you owe us taxes. And, that is a thing. Like, underestimating the complexity of a situation or accepting stereotype is a very dangerous thing for many reasons. The Mongolians, as an example, were not just a bunch of crazy guys on horses. They, in fact, organized perhaps the most advanced mobile infantry force and mobile cavalry force on planet Earth at their time, had an insanely advanced structure for just general infrastructure and political control, and also were alarmingly progressive. Of course they beat the Chinese. In fact, actually, as I recall, there was a Mongolian emperor for a while.
Yeah.
Precisely because of that. Go figure. So, it is easy to rely on stereotype, but truth is usually more difficult to grasp and nuance.
Especially with the Mongolian Empire, which people are like, oh, the Mongols were great. They would go in and then they'd liberate the Chinese people. No, they were murderers and rapists. There's always another side to history. Even with the Union during the Civil War, Sherman led his troops around the back of the Confederates and killed a lot of innocents and raped a lot of people.
Albine, I love you. Yes, accurate, 100%. That was less a joke and more historical callback in that scene. I
didn't vote for you.
Yeah.
That's absolutely true. That's a good way to get off the heavy topic I was going down. But
no, dude, I feel you, man. You're good.
There's we're just like, America, United States were heroes during World War II. Oh.
I'm just going to put it out there, folks. There's literally any time you see history books say the clear winners of this war were, I'd like you to read into that a little more carefully. Because under most circumstances, that history was written by that victor and probably discounts a lot of what actually happened in said war. Because they don't feel right, General Sherman. Or basically, just remember, there's no such thing as a good war. Ever. There's never been a war that's ever happened that hasn't had massive human rights violations, large losses of life, terrible things happen on all sides, even the ones that we idolize or revere. But there is one exception to that, which is the Ostrich War, but we're not going to get into that. So I'm sure the Australian viewers would appreciate us not talking about the time that their military, a small detachment of their military, was defeated by literal raptors.
Emus.
But yeah, I mean, yeah. They're raptors. They're velociraptors. They're just fuzzy velociraptors. Let's be real.
That was the best war. Oh man, that's
which they're apparently also bulletproof. That's what staggered me. So for those of you who are just slight aside here, because why not, right? This is the chip off the block. We're allowed to tangent for a second.
It's called chip off the block for a reason. It's in the
name. So apparently there was this war that the Australians had to fight against emus because they sort of exploded population-wise. I am super abridging this for you guys. Yeah. Look into it. Just trust me. The Australian emu war is incredible. It is. But they literally tried to drop bombs on them, shoot them with machine guns, and it turns out that emus have such redundantly resilient bodies. They're incredibly muscular, have enough floof, and this is my favorite part, their brains are small enough where getting their brains and internal organs are small enough and compact enough where hitting them in a vital point with a gun is a damn near impossible. And bombs actually aren't even that effective because their brain structure is such that the concussive force that you would normally get on a human that would pulp our brains to mush, apparently emus, unless it's like point blank, they can kind of shrug it. So they ended up just dumping weapons ordnance from World War II on these guys thinking, oh, we got plenty, we'll be fine. And it didn't work. And they had to surrender because emus are overpowered. Tierzoo, hit that up if you're watching this. If you ever come across this, please, I want to hear about that in Tierzoo. So.
Holy shit. There's another one. I have one F word for this entire show. So I'll use it now. What the fuck? I mean,
DARPA's emu robot move over to
Oh,
I'm just saying, folks. The Acres are going to be fun and Legacy for that reason. Anyway, there's my one shameless plug of the night.
You can do as many as you want.
I appreciate it. So, ignorance seems to be the vibe, and I like that idea. I think that works really well. It means that a lot of this setting is going to have, I imagine, a lot of upsets. politically, socially, militarily, because the powers that be or the populations are just not very equipped to handle the new or properly assess its threat.
Yeah.
I imagine the first battle with the first mage wasn't a battle at all. I imagine it was just one army left, one army just might as well have not showed up, and one mage just walked through all of them. The other side's like, what happened to our army? Like, army? Oh. Oops. Surrender? And I imagine that's kind of how everything has probably been, where it's just every year, because this is a rising... That also is a tie-in, too. Everything is meteorically rising. All these nations, all these powers, magic itself, it's all getting unlocked at once. Science is being rediscovered. So everything is new. And everything blindsides somebody.
Yeah, and we're in a sort of, I think... This sounds cool to me. If it sounds stupid out loud, I'm sorry. But I'm getting this sort of apocalyptic renaissance.
I love that, actually. Yeah, no, that's perfectly fair. And honestly, that is... Like, so, this is my art history. Okay, so, full disclosure, folks. I do have a college degree. I'm not actually an art history major, because I'm technically no major. I'm a general major. But I studied the crap out of art history. I just didn't make it my degree. This is what happens when you go for a mechanical engineering degree, cut out halfway through, and decide you're just going to get the general so you can cover your losses.
Real quick, I spelled Renaissance correctly on the first try.
Yo, I can't even do that, and I studied the Renaissance. That's nuts.
There's no way I spelled it. Go on, I'm going to look this.
No, you're good. Just saying, the Renaissance was, in fact, a post-apocalyptic Renaissance. The Dark Age of Europe was, in fact, a post-apocalypse. It was an apocalypse for them. The Black Plague was literally the sort of thing that we, to this day, honestly, it's something I don't think we can properly understand the impact of on a personal level.
No.
But, yeah, no. Europe literally got between war, plague, famine. Because there was a famine at the time, too, by the way. Because it turns out if you kill enough farmers with plague, you get a famine.
Yeah, if you cut you off your food.
Not to mention just like crappy weather too. So yeah, no, they were straight up in medieval Mad Max territory until the Renaissance came along, and a bunch of learned folks, or I should say interested scholars, were like, hey, so turns out the Romans had some cool ideas. What if we try to rediscover some of those scientifically? And the church tried to say no, and then realized very quickly, wow, these actually are kind of really brilliant ideas. Maybe we should actually integrate them so we don't look like we're dumb. Because literally the whole planet will laugh at us if we keep this nonsense up.
True.
Yeah. So that is a thing. And I agree. This is a renaissance. It's built on the ashes of the last world. And they're finding out all these new and probably old things. You know, that's a thing. A nation idea. Just a random one that popped in my head. A nation purely of scavengers. Like you mentioned, the guys like radiation running into the city. They could literally be an entire subfaction in this world. Folks just who build their entire power base off of what they can find.
That could be a class.
Yeah.
Scavenger. And they specialize in making redundant a lot of the things. Think to old world parts. And hey, there's this cool weird device. It's a you can put it on the end of a gun, and you can make it like really quiet. See, and you know that
or you can put it on a stick, and man, it makes a really good bludgeon.
Fill it with cement.
Yeah,
just swinging around like a rebar club. Honestly, I think Underestimated is good. We got some good ideas down. We had a good train of thought from Underestimated. Now, folks, I want to make clear when we have a word that comes up. It doesn't mean we have to necessarily, everything that we come up from that point on has to be exactly related to that word, because let's be honest, these thoughts were sprung from said word. So they technically fall under the word. Shut up. They're relevant.
It's derivative. We're going for derivative. These are inspirational tags. And inspiration doesn't necessarily lead you down the exact same path you came from. See every conversation we've had since the start of our streaming together.
Literally. Kier, welcome in. Is there a noiser too? Yeah, you could put like a put like a tuba horn on the end of a gun and like duct tape it, you'll
Oh
hear
my,
that baby for miles.
oh my God, that would actually be a horrifying sonic weapon. Like
Just like
literally,
blasting like as loud noise as possible. Oh, that's
uh,
oh man,
it works. Okay, so
that would
that
liquefy your
actually has
ears.
scientific precedent, practical modern day precedent. There's a guy I follow, Colin Furs, on YouTube.
Yeah.
He's literally just a plumber and a self-taught engineer who makes all sorts of crazy shit. At one point, someone told him to make a jet bike. So he was like, well, I'm not from the Jetsons, so I have to make something that's real. So he made a pulse jet. For anyone who's aware of what a pulse jet is basically a tube with one half filled with aerosol explosive and the other one lit. And so it's basically the jet engine equivalent of, and this is me making the one drug paraphernalia reference, a bong. It's basically an explosive bong. But it works because the fire on one end ignites, travels down, hits the explosive, detonates, it goes back. And it has this very specific thrum. And that's why if you ever watch anything about World War II, they'll talk about the V1 and V2 bombs having like a very specific ver kind of sound, because that was the pulse jet firing in pulse. That's why it's called a pulse jet. It's pulsed jets of fire. However, it is also hilariously, annoyingly, frustratingly loud. So loud that at one point when he made his bike, they could hear it like halfway across his district. And he was in the middle of a nowhere in a quarry testing it. People could still hear it. And so someone suggested that because of how loud his pulse jet was, they were like, why don't you make a big one? Put it between a pair of giant metal butt cheeks, point it over the cliffs to Normandy, and see if they can hear it. And they could. So sonic weaponry derived from simple explosive force by just putting it onto a big enough amplifier. Yeah, you blow up a grenade in front of a tuba horn to amplify that shockwave. Man, there's gonna be some people screaming in front of that thing.
Well, yeah, just the idea of
I
like
believe it.
directing. Yeah, wow. Derek said he teaches about that briefly. But what, Derek, you're telling me that you teach people how to make improvised explosives? I don't think that's legal. There's a
Yeah.
reason the Anarchist Cookbook is banned here in the States. It's one of the few books I'd say deserves a ban.
I mean, yeah.
It literally teaches you how to make pipe bombs and crack. I mean, like, like
It's true. Yeah, pulse jet engines,
bullshit.
yeah.
You could. I
I
mean,
know
a pulse jet engine
I know
could
I
technically
butchered
be-
that, by the way. I apologize, Derek. I know I butchered that explanation. That is about as close as I can get without a better engineering grasp and like a literal textbook in front of me to describe the mechanism. I teach more turbines, that's fair.
That was actually pretty accurate. Yeah. He said that was actually pretty accurate.
Yeah, good stuff.
Like to hear it.
Feels good. Yeah.
Folks, guess what time it is? It's time for prompts. So, send us prompts your way. It could be literally anything. It'd be like, what kind of fruits grow in this world? Please don't send that one in. That one's boring as shit. That's another shit. That's another one. Who is like one of the most political figure? An interesting building. A type of vehicle. A type of animal. Stuff like that. Literally anything that your beautiful minds can think of. We will take those requests, have them ready for us, and we will be right back.
Talking Super Mario Bros. Movie.
Chat is talking Super Mario Bros. Hey, folks, we are back. I'm gonna read the chat to see what horrible things you sent us. I'm just kidding. Let's.
Actually, not seeing many prompts.
No, there's a couple. Derek said, "What would happen if a sentient race of crocodiles came back in time-riding dinosaurs and established their own?" What is this crack?
You see what I mean? You see, there were many. Is there dire wolves? Is one too. I see.
Derek's just asking me about the plot of Dinotopia, and I don't like it.
Oh God, Derek, you hit me in my heart. I love Dinotopia, but that's because I'm an art major, and Dinotopia is literally like the most beautiful set of books I've ever seen in my life. Straight up.
There's probably gonna be some canine-esque creature, lupine.
Yeah.
There's gonna be creatures like that, but
canids, I guess.
Yeah, canids would be another good. Just a dog, just
Yeah.
a dog. Let's put it in simple terms. There'll be creatures like that. The thing is, I've been a really big nerd lately. I was literally watching a video on how like early life was developed here on planet Earth. I was just trying to get an understanding of why things evolved the way they do, why we've like evolved to have locomotive movement with light, stuff like that. Huge nerd, giant. I literally watched like a 20-minute micro essay about it. Cool as hell. I don't know that. What I'm getting to with that, let me digress, is that there's creatures that existed before the fall of the first world, the old world, and there's some that just completely died out and went extinct. Obviously, just from like the drastic change in temperature, just weren't able to adapt to survive. There are a very large amount of specific animal species, even here on Earth, that are so adaptable that could survive even the worst conditions, i.e. a cockroach. But in this particular
tardigrades, the thing we literally don't know how to kill.
They are, yeah, tardigrades are literally unkillable. I'd love to be a tardigrade, just live forever. Not really though, but stuff like that, you know.
You can live forever, but you have to be basically just a butthole.
That's fine. That's kind of my existence already, anyway, because I'm always spewing crap. But but you know, this is a fantasy world, so obviously we're gonna push the envelope a little bit, but it's based more in science. So like if we're gonna have like a dog like creature, it's gonna have to evolve to sort of survive a arcane radiation. So it'll probably lose fur, it'll probably grow tougher skin, maybe bigger claws to help dig through more cracked and like tough dirt, more resilient hide to sort of resist maybe acidic rain. Larger teeth, smaller eyes. You wouldn't need to see that much. You know, smaller, more focused eyes on the sides of the head, stuff like that. They would function more like, less like.
Or multiple sets as well.
Multiple sets of eyes would be helpful too, in the same way that, like, you know, arachnids, stuff like that, evolved to have multiple ocular things. Sorry, I'm getting way too scientific, and I'm not scientific. But
you're good. You're good.
You know, that's actually going back to that thing I was talking about with the evolution creatures, stuff like that. One of the first commonly developed things amongst creatures that like had, and this happened amongst creatures that had like nothing in common with one another, was the development of eyes. So it's not, eyes didn't sort of like come from like one specific creature and sort of move down. It came from a bunch of different. So it's not like a common trait in the way like, oh, insects and dogs are closely related because they share eyes. No, they're furthest back ancestor, like an ant. There's the common trait with dogs because they both have eyes. No, a lot of different things develop their own sets of eyes. Eyes take in light in different ways. It's the reason why humans and bears and dogs and other mammals that are somewhat resemblant to us don't have anywhere near the same eye, because their eyes have developed and evolved through different things. But
I think the particular term used now, broadly for the phenomenon, it's while this is specific to crabs, I think it is sort of a broad term now used to describe the phenomenon of parallel evolution. But you can also hear the term cancerization involved, where it's, in the case of cancerization, it is literally the fact that for some reason the animal kingdom insists on evolving crabs, like everywhere, out of everything. Everything turns to crabs. Give it enough time, all life forms become crab. Reject humanity, return unto crab. And that it's because it's a highly efficient form of just body structure. You move super fast. You move laterally, so predators have a hard time catching you because most predators are not ready to run laterally 90 degrees to their left at full speed, but you totally are. The ability to potentially breathe on water and in land, burrow, and also be hard to kill. It's just all sorts of lovely things. But parallel evolution is totally a thing across the animal kingdom. Eyes are a common trait. Lungs, another common trait that is broadly sort of sprung up from a bunch of different methods.
Blood is a very common thing. And it's
Yeah.
the whole point of blood being created was to have a way to circulate oxygen over the body. So it's like earlier life forms, we have a more closed circulatory system as humans. We have veins and stuff. But a lot of animals actually have something called a blood cavity. So what it is their organs are sort of floating in a cavity of blood. And what that does is it allows for really quick and easy transportation to different organs. But the problem being is that they're not as specialized, because you have these blood sacs, right? And they're connected by small tubes that flow blood from other places. So like you have your the brain, which a commonly formed thing, a parallel trait amongst a lot of creatures is they formed head. That has nothing to do different. It came from a bunch of different places. You have the sensor, so you have where the brain, where the central processing would be, and then you have the eyes, which stem from that. And the eyes are typically in front of the mouth, so you can see what you're eating and consuming live. Hence why humans don't have eyes on their nipples or something. So we are like right above our mouths, so we can see what we're eating, we can smell what we're eating, which is why we develop noses, so we can smell.
This is the reason why Balchinians don't exist, folks, because that biologically makes no sense. Just saying.
And
Men in Black love you.
and another thing amongst like successful creatures that aren't dormant, I don't remember the word, the technical animal word for being non-transient. We have this sort of we have this lovely thing called bilateralness amongst animals, especially animals that are locomotive, so we're allowed to move, stuff like that. And there's a lot of non-bilateral creatures like sea anemones, urchins, stuff like that. And what do a lot of them have in common? They stay still. They are born in one place and they die. And they gather food from one spot, which gives me a horrifying idea for a monster. A land anemone that literally lashes out and grabs humans and swallows them whole, like a Sarlacc pit from Star Wars.
There's some amazingly fun ideas like that. I actually have a couple ideas that I'm probably not going to end up using from my old bestiary build streams on Legacy. I would totally not mind donating a couple of them to this project, because some of them are pretty sick.
Just for fun, because like, you know, you got to think about like, yeah, you would have
Yeah.
a dog, but you'd have like all these different evolutions of dogs. You'd have dogs that kept their fur in like wetter parts, and their fur would you have other dogs that would have keep their fur, but they sort of have it specialized like an otter, so it's more water resistant, so they're better swimmers. And then you'd have dogs that don't have any fur at all, so they can resist acidic rain, have tougher hides to combat other predators and stuff like that.
Because this is a world with a magical apocalypse to a degree, like a quasi-magical science apocalypse. This world probably is about as or at least geologically and environmentally diverse as a fucking Sonic the Hedgehog game. So, like, you're probably not going to find... Like, you will find the same species writ like 8 different ways. This is like Pokemon. You have Alolan versions everywhere of the same thing, and you're like, wow, that's pretty biologically similar, until the environment had something to say about that. And then it just went out there to survive, and it works.
It's the same thing with people. We'll do a little bit more of this. This is a very long. We could talk through this about it.
Yeah, and I actually did see a couple of prompts too, so we can get to those in a minute. Yeah.
So see, the thing is with animals, in this world, we could say that the atmosphere has more oxygen in it, which actually is what people believe led to dinosaurs being so big. There was so much oxygen in the atmosphere at those prehistoric times that it allowed animals to be that big, and the other animals were also that big, and the fauna, everything around them was that big to compensate for the fact that they needed to eat a lot of food. Probably, I'd imagine some of these giant creatures probably ate half a ton, probably more. I'm probably
easily, yeah, easily.
But you know, the reason why we don't have creatures that big is because being smaller tends to help. I mean, you're less liable to be attacked by predators, which predators have often evolved to be smaller. Hence why we are humans. We are at the top of the food chain, but we're not the biggest by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, look at blue whales. Look at how big they are. But look at how susceptible they are to predators. They're giants. The reason they are giant, which means a lot of things can attack them. So,
there's different sets of advantages to different evolutionary things. It's
Right.
the reason why when people talk about evolution and they don't understand it, they think, oh, well, with time, we would eventually have all of our problems solved. We become invulnerable, super strong, super fast. No. Nature filters for one thing and one thing only. It filters your ability to successfully reproduce. Whatever means you use to get there doesn't matter. All that matters is that at the end of the day, you, at the end of your lifespan, have produced more spawn than it took for you to get to where you are. And if your population grows successfully, those are the traits that pass on. It's the reason why humans, as we were getting on in our modern age, we're sort of evolving ourselves based on our own personal physical likes. It's the reason why apparently nowadays it's actually harder for us to childbirth. We're selecting away from the traits that make smoother childbirth. We're selecting away from certain traits that give us certain old advantages. It's why people are getting taller. We're literally internally selecting for height because that's a physical thing we like. And it's, with animals, they don't do that. Animals have unfiltered, at least for the most part, evolutionary processes. So if a creature ends up 60 stories tall, there had to be some logical reason that made it survive to do that enough to get that warped huge. And dinosaurs probably, between the fact that a lot of the trees were massive back then, so a lot of the larger herbivores probably made more sense just to have a bigger neck than it is to climb that high. Higher oxygen means, again, it's a lot easier for your circulatory system to move stuff around. And a billion other things, too. If one thing gets bigger, everything else in the biosphere can get bigger because it makes the nutrient pool that much easier to access. So,
the world, in a nutshell, is it for
yes.
we give, we take. But humans have been... But we won't get into that, obviously.
Yeah.
Bon said, random prompt generator. You're so convinced that I'll hurt them that you haven't considered it's the last thing I'd ever want to do.
Oh, I see what that is. That's a narrative prompt for writing from a character perspective or a narrative
That's still a really cool prompt. It's the idea, because the immediate thing I think of is just like, war. I think of mages. It's just like, you're so convinced they'll hurt them. Maybe mages don't really have a choice. Why would they want to hurt people? You know what I mean? Unless they're just like so indoctrinated and brainwashed by a nation's ideals.
You could even view that as the nation's motivation itself. Like literally because we talked about it before. Magic is an unstable thing in this world. This isn't the sort of thing where it's like, oh, it's like a sorcerer. You effortlessly, or even without there's some effort that goes into being a sorcerer. We like to rib on sorcerers because who doesn't like to make fun of someone whose magical claim to fame is that their great-grandmother had a fun time with a dragon? But at the same time, there is some difficulty with mastering your magic. But for the most part, it's sort of like a puberty kind of thing. You grow into it with time. But this is more of a, to make that comparison, 40K-esque kind of thing, or a Bright setting. Where, in Bright, you find out you're a wizard, or capable of being a wizard. They call it a Bright. By grabbing a wand, and the wand doesn't kill you. That's how you find out. There's no other way. There's no other test. His power levels over 9,000 or metachlorian count to do. You basically just go well, Grandpa was a mage, Grandma was a mage, my mom was a mage. Hope this works, and then hope you don't get Thanos. And 40K, you find out you're a mage either by someone knocking at your door and putting a black bag over your head and throwing you onto a ship and taking you off to, if you're lucky, go to magic school or mage school and become a useful weapon for the Imperium. If you're unlucky, get thrown into the Golden Throne as a personal battery for the Emperor. Or, if you're really unlucky, you don't even get that knock on your door and you turn into a grotesque portal into some other world made out of meat because you had a weird thought. And magic in this world is probably on that scale, where it's you notice that your kid stares at the stars a lot, and then one day you go out on the onto like your back porch, and you see the kid on top of the hill pointing at the stars and his hand glowing, and a very thin line going up into the sky, and you go, "Oh shit!" But before you know it, witch hunters knock down your door and tell you, "You gotta let us take your kid because you're now officially not qualified to raise them, and we're probably going to turn them into a weapon. But the alternative is they either get themselves killed or kill a lot of people."
Or kill
So,
you.
yeah, entirely. It might be a total accident. One day the kid's just like, "Well, you put me in timeout. I'm so angry that," hand slam on the table, and everything within a 30-meter radius deatomizes. Like, oops. What parents are qualified to deal with that?
I don't know, you want me to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
So I like that idea as like a motivation for like a nation or even like an individual or mages too. That could be a recurring theme with that, with like even a whole nation state with just like, we're doing this because we have no choice. Not realizing that is in fact the reason they have no choice. That they have just settled on that.
yeah. Sorry,
Who's the artist that we're advertising?
oh, that is Hal. That is at Van Helsing Art on Twitter. She is my significant other. Her commissions are open right now. So if you like what you see, this is a commission for Fey Earth, Neil from Fey Earth. This is going to be actually in his book that he is developing. If you like what you see, you can get something done yourself. She also has commercial prices if you would like to have put into your book. And yeah, I highly recommend just talk. She's great. Even if you're not interested in getting a commission. Loves gushing about her art, and I like looking at it. Really,
It's gorgeous. It's definitely
absolutely
gorgeous.
So,
That's probably why that person asked about like, "Oh, hey, Hal, you're here," because they saw that and they assumed it was another person's portrait on stream.
I saw that,
that'll
and
be
then
it.
my brain just like, you know, those like coin pushing machines, just gone. It was there, but it's gone. Sorry, I should have seen that. These are advertising spaces. So on your left is Hal, and on your right, it could be you. It could be me. It could be anybody.
Me.
I'm not going to
Could be.
advertise myself. It's probably gonna be on.
I am shameless. I might advertise for a little bit there. So
You're part of the show. You're entitled to it. But folks, advertise for free with me. If you want to pay me money, I won't say no. But it is for free. So if you want to get your ads on Chip Off the Block, I'll see if I can also figure out a way to get ads on Thursday night streams. But yeah, if you want to get a hold of me, a lot of you have me on Discord. If you don't have me on Discord, you have me on Twitter. Literally, just even if just send me an email, I don't care. I'd be happy to advertise for you. Absolutely free. But
do we do VODs? We do. This will be our first one.
This will be our first VOD. Or VOD. Yes, hopefully we will be doing VODs. Granted, everything works out. Hopefully I'm going to post up on YouTube. I might actually hire a video editor to find good clips from the show, because I don't know if I have time to do that. I don't know if I have the energy to do that. But regardless, we do VODs. Here from Wolves Den said, "The Science of Science Fiction by Aaron MacDonald might interest you." I've actually seen that pop up in my recommendation. Might have to give it a read when I have time to read. Or audiobook. I'll go on a walk.
Yeah.
Bonbon said, "What traits are considered attractive in this thing? Strengths, personality traits, weaknesses? Like how for some reason moody." I mean,
I think it would be like everything else. It's a cultural thing, so that'll vary from place to place.
absolutely. So you could have a place that like values height, but you could also have a place that values like there's a lot of places that actually value larger people. You know, I mean, I'm sure in an era like this where we're going back to feudalism, being overweight is
Yikes.
attractive. Well, I mean that's kind of,
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. I'm just saying it's one of those like. There's no easy way to drop that, man.
Well, there's no. Well, yeah, I got to drop a truth bomb.
Fair.
The earliest foundations of civilization came from feudalistic tendencies. Look at Babylonia. Babylonia's being feudal. Like,
Rice kingdoms, yeah, no. All of human history comes from somebody deciding, "Hey, I could farm here," and then the next person saying, "Hey, can I have some of that food?" And him going, "You can have some of my food if you agree to work for me," and thus the feudalism was born.
yeah, it's just like, can you protect me if I give you some of my food? It's just like,
Literally the episode of Rick and Morty with the Purge. Like that part at the end. That is literally what that is.
Yep.
It is literally a civilization is standing there going, "We need to build something." First order of business, getting food. Second order of business, who gets the food? Third order of business, well, the food is on my land, therefore, and it all spirals. I'm just saying.
But yeah,
I will
feudalism is
say,
the foundation.
I think there is a set of traits we can say are broadly valuable in this whole setting. And it, because again, it sort of comes back down to the idea, and this isn't like personality traits, this isn't physical traits of a traditional kind.
Yeah.
This is rather a capacity, which is either capacity to use, manipulate, or disable magic, because of how pivotal it is. So if you're a predispositioned mage, that is a trait that will be valuable wherever you go. Maybe if you're between two warring nations and one random peasant goes from point A to point B, you might not get through to the other side. Hell, they might kill you if they think that you're a combatant. But if you're a mage and you walk up to the front gates and your hands are up and you go, "Hey, I can do this," and everything within 30 feet of them turns into glass except the people, and I can do that to people, they're going to lower that drawbridge and let you through and find out what your business is.
Absolutely.
So magic, or the ability to access magic, is a pivotal thing, because not every mage is going to work the same. Like the sky connected mages are, I'm sure, a big thing. The sky tethered, or the tethered mages, maybe that's a term we can use, like the tethered.
I like the tethered.
Yeah, like that's one kind of magic. Others might access magic through like a physical form, like trapped magic, kind of like the way artificers create bound magic into items and can unleash it. Whereas others might not use magic at all, but just know the right strategies to dismantle it. The one thing more valuable than a chariot was the testudo that defeated the chariot. The one thing more valuable than that was the elephants that smashed the tetsudo. And then it just goes on from there. So your capacity to either have magic, leverage magic, or defeat magic, either personally or scientifically or as a community, is a huge quality in this world. It will be what people will fight battles for more than almost anything else, I'd imagine. Resources are pivotal, but your ability to leverage magic or defeat it will be your ability to protect and project force on this world on a political scale. So that would be the thing I would answer.
I'm sure that in that regard, without going too much deeper into this topic, so we can move on to the next.
Yeah.
In the way that medieval knights in the Middle Ages, they were the same way that we view sports stars. People sort of rooted for them. They're just like, oh, sports star, Aaron McGuire or something from St. Louis Cardinals. Like, oh, Aaron McGuire is better than Albert Pujols from the Dolphins, you know? It's just like, my baseball player could beat your baseball player. It's the same way, just like, my knight's cooler than yours because his name's like, I don't know, Arturius or something. That's a Dark Souls reference, I think. But, and like,
cool.
Oh, my name's cooler than yours because his name's Oleander and he has this cool spear. And the spear can like, it has like, it's like an electric spear. And it'll like, get what I'm getting at. It's literally just
I shoot you with it's the old playground adage. It's, oh, I shoot you with a gun. Oh, well, I have an anti-gun. I have a shield. Well, I have an anti-shield piercing bullet. Well, I have an anti-shield piercing bullet shield.
It's that, but like that my dad could beat up your dad sort of version of that. It's like it's the whole fantasy football kind of thing. Just like we idolize these people, even though a lot of them aren't great people.
They're people. That's just how it goes, folks. It turns out you take a person, you put them on a really big pedestal, and you give them way more resources, and everything gets bigger, good and bad. Sometimes they become really bad people. Sometimes become really good people. Sometimes there's people, and they just have a persona of one of those two things.
Exactly.
So,
but yeah, I feel like there would be knights in that sense. Why wouldn't there?
Yeah. Knights, assassins, that kind of thing. Yeah, I could definitely see that.
What are the naming conventions? Well, considering that that's a really broad topic for some,
yeah,
like Omni has been saying, I think it would be a but that being said, this world is refounding cultures. They are making their own new cultures based upon like very faint, tiny fragments of the previous world. So you might have something with like a more like Asian theme. So you have people named like Tetsuo or something like a more Asian theme, Asian coded country. But you could also have a mixture of things. You could mix like an Asian theme with like a Swana theme, technically. Like you could mix like African with like Asian, and you could have like a weird amalgamation of names. We haven't even like scratched the surface when it comes to that sort of thing. And the reason
Yeah,
I'm
we
bringing
technically haven't made our first nation yet. We've like
no,
vague balled ideas, and we have like coalesced a couple of ideas into what could develop into nations. We don't have any like flags or names picked out.
broad strokes,
Super broad.
broad stroke.
We are the beginning of the Bob Ross. It's just a blue canvas. We're gonna add those happy little trees in real soon.
I wish I had a paintbrush so I could go.
I do, but it's buried under all my crap.
All my paintbrush with my miniature stuff.
Okay, yeah, I have an X-Acto knife mixed in there. I'm not groping for my paintbrush in the dark. That's a good idea.
Derek said, I don't mean to gloss over your question, but like
No, I did want to quickly touch on that. I might have an educated thing in response to that, but it'll go quick. For anyone who's watched The Expanse, it's a great example of an evolutionary name growth thing. So the idea in The Expanse is the solar system begins to get colonized, and as a result, Mars is colonized by a number of different people, and they have entire regions on Mars that are homogenized off those initial colonists. So as a result, you have one of the biggest populations on Mars is a very particular valley, which is occupied by its two founding cultures. a group from the Indian space program, which is the bulk of the population, but a very small, pervasive group of Texan backers who went with them. And as a result, you have a bunch of very long-standing, traditional Eastern Asian cultures, but with a very specific Texan drawl and method of speech. Whereas the Belters, who live on the solar system, who live on the edge of the solar system, are literally a combination of hundreds of different peoples, almost all of them being impoverished, being their only combination or their only real tie, and have made an entire name structure out of what they call Belta Lang, or Lang Belta, which is basically a creolized version of a dozen or so different languages. And so, yeah, like, that's probably closer to what we're going to be looking at. Names are probably going to be derivative from our age, but again, run it through a blender, and then pour it into a smoothie, and then add some fruit in and shake it, and before you know it, it's not anything like the way you remember it. That's probably what we're going with.
The only thing I can think of that would be like a base for naming generation. A lot of Middle Eastern folks name their children Muhammad. So like they relate that to a. 'Cause some religions are like, oh, we don't want you naming your children after prophets, but other religions are a lot more open about that. There's a lot of people named Muhammad, so there would probably be a lot of people named things along the lines of or like derivatives of like Ura, stuff like that, especially in the religious society. In the same way that Alexander the Great, he named like 28 different renamed 28 different places like Alexandria.
Yeah,
what are you supposed to do with that? He named like a bunch.
Yeah, it's so. There's a reason. There's like there was like a dozen Constantinoples.
Yeah,
like
until
basically
we got over to the Ottomans, we figured out like this is the real.
If you have one pivotal person or one pivotal figure that dominates a society and conquers any degree of land and has even the slightest bit of ego, I promise you there are 2 to 3 nations or cities or states or regions or cities, blocks, or even smaller streets that bear their name. It's like going down. It's the Martin Luther King. I got so much street cred, they write my name on the signs. And it's how it works. Like, you get big enough, even if you're not the one who names it, someone's gonna name themselves or a thing after you.
Yeah, you gotta wonder how many different, like, just think about how many different places are named, like Martin Luther King Boulevard, Martin Luther King Street. Like, it's everywhere here in the States. Some of these places have nothing to do with Martin Luther King, in essence, but they name it that and as a namesake and remembrance of this great person that provided a lot of new and interesting and, like society-shaking ideas. Like this...
Washington. How many Washingtons?
Yeah.
Like, cities... There's a whole state.
It's literally
There's a
state
whole.
called Washington.
Our capital is named after our first president.
Washington,
Like,
D.C.
yeah. So same thing. So there you go, Bon. There's your short answer to that.
Derek said evolve to crab dog
Yeah.
folk.
We were on a pretty good crab kick there. I like this. I'll make a flag for evolve to crab. I'll post that up there. See if we can get an emote for that.
Bon also said, do these people have similar ethics as those today, or do they been radicalized due to the harsh conditions of the environment? Kind of like Dune, where if you're not strong, you die, and they just recycle your material. There is a survival of the fittest thing, because on our modern society, we've sort of grown to the point where we are stable and we are strong enough to be able to support people that wouldn't have been kept alive in, even just 50 years ago. And
most of our problems are kind of self-made at this point to a degree.
Yeah.
So
we can. I mean, think about it. When at any point in history have we had this many healthy and living disabled people? No point in history have we ever had that. Because this is the sad reality of things. Without getting too deep into it, even 50 years ago, euthanization was a common practice in hospitals, even here in the States. So like you would have nurses ask you to say that your child is disabled, or they have a very bad deficiency, or they have some sort of problem that's like very apparent, like Down syndrome, and a lot of mothers would just say that was a very common thing, even 50 years ago. That's the scary thing about that. We only just got over that as a civilization, because we find we've gotten over the whole survival of the fittest, or only the strong survive kind of thing. We are not in a tribunal society where that even matters, right? We're in a society now where we have the resources, we have the time, we have the sympathy and empathy for people with disabilities, to the point where we can take care of them and they can be functioning members of society.
Whether society actually cares to or not is another discussion, but we have the capacity to easily.
Exactly.
Or readily.
Yeah, we have all these resources at our disposal to be able to help these people. And that's not even something like a disability, like being paralyzed be it from the waist to the neck down, or what have you, or having a stroke, like being paralyzed from one body. This could also be mental things. I mean, think about how many different treatments we have for things that we didn't even know existed 100 years ago, like autism and ADHD.
Let's just go with the easy. Depression. Straight up.
Absolutely.
How many people in history have died to depression we have no idea about? Just didn't make it through. They didn't make it through their 20s. They just had a really bad day. They committed suicide. And they were like, oh, he was possessed, or he had a really bad year or something. They just didn't realize that, no, he had a chemical imbalance that literally prevented him from feeling good. And that was that person's solution, which is horrifying.
Hence comes the term nihilism, because a lot of that nihilism comes from nihilism isn't the whole idea of like everything is dark, everything is doomed. It comes from depression, and depression is that sort of thing. It's just like everything is hopeless, right? There's also a common theme with the reason why we don't have like records of people committing suicide, or just outright killing themselves, is because the Catholic Church actually didn't allow, for the longest time, people that committed suicide to be buried on Catholic grounds. They weren't people that committed suicide. That was considered the ultimate sin, and to a lot of people, it still is the ultimate sin to commit suicide. So, at the time of
we
Martin
use
Luther,
church records to keep track of a lot of historical figures and populations.
Look at Rome. Rome. A lot of that stuff is recorded by the church. And another thing, we brought up Martin Luther King Jr. Let's bring up his namesake, Martin Luther, the literal creator of Lutheranism. He found out that there was this boy in an abbey that was miserable. Like, he was just so unbelievably distraught all the time for no particular reason. Nobody knew why, but the boy hung himself. So they said that, okay, we would have to take the body out and put it in a mass burial ground where they put bodies of like the sick, stuff like that. They would just wrap them up and throw them away. So there's a lot of mass burial grounds. But what Martin Luther did was say, no, we are all God's children. So what he did is he got a shovel himself and started digging a grave for this boy. That's one of the biggest reasons that Martin Luther was so controversial, is because he challenged almost every single fundamental idea of Catholicism. And there's going to be plenty of figures like in this, because, Catholicism is, writing is not up to interpretation. That's why the church didn't want the people to be able to read the Bible, because they wanted to interpret it for them. That's a huge thing that happened.
For the record, I'm going to make the hottest, spiciest comment I'm going to make probably all night, and that is the reason why televangelism is potentially so dangerous, because anyone who's willing to tell you what you should believe in your most secretive and personal space in your life, you should probably be concerned about. They're probably trying to sell you something. That's my hottest, everything is on fire take on that
No,
topic.
you're absolutely right. I've never heard of a good televangelist. I'm going to be quite honest. These people are talking about how poor. I'm going to get off this really quickly, but the televangelists are the kind of people that'll talk about how the poor are suffering here in the States, yet they're wearing like. Anyway,
I don't think we're going to get sponsored by them anyway, and I don't really care. So that's fine.
This is sponsored by televangelism. Be a Catholic, kiddo.
Oh God.
But
yeah, no, I think that is definitely a thing. I think that there are some ethics that hold true throughout all of human history, from what we can tell, which is that anthropology seems to have discovered that one of the biggest traits humans have ever had is the fact that what separates us in many ways from many other species is that we transport our wounded. While a lot of apes do that, it seems to be specifically more of a hominid ape thing. Some ape cultures will do their best to do so and will try. Some other species do this as well. It isn't exclusive to us, but it is definitely a unique trait of a highly socialized animal, is the transporting of the wounded, because the wounded are, under most circumstances, especially in a more feral or wild environment, not going to survive or get better in the same way we would now. We have medicine. If I break my leg, we know that we can reset it. You break your leg in the wild, it's probably never going to get better. It's probably going to fuse wrong, or you have to remove it. And that's not going to make you better. It's going to keep you from being as crippled as you were before. So compassion is a trait that immediately comes from that. We know we can track biologically compassion to the genesis of the human species. And so some things will probably stay the same. Familial compassion, familial ties, that will probably be a big thing. You're still probably going to see the very most basics of like, hey, we're not going to see things like what happened in Star Trek, where you have to wonder, like, how did the Klingons make it out of their dark age? When literally, like, their society is built on a cultural basis of backstabbing and murder? Like, that's not a civilization that could make it into the industrial age successfully, let alone into space. So, but,
the industrial age was a lot of backstab.
Well, true, but someone had to agree to work in a foundry somewhere. Someone had to agree to be submissive. Good luck seeing any Klingon doing that without a Batleth fight. And so, like, there are going to be some things. We're going to see a lot. An individual person, if you took them out of this setting and you sat them down across from you and you removed literally every topic of conversation you couldn't possibly share, like the topics of magic and what you watched on TV as mutually exclusive things you can't possibly both understand, and you both just asked, like, hey, how's your mother? Or how's your family? Do you have any childhood friends? What's your favorite pastime when you were a kid? And there'll be a lot of similar topics. I'm sure they'd have the exact same 20 questions they would ask you, broadly speaking, outside of the few topics you can't touch. So a lot of that's probably similar. Much like in our planet, you find anyone on any culture, anywhere else, and the same questions they're going to ask. Who are you? Are you happy? Do you have enough to eat? Do you need help? Like, the basic three, like, couple of things. You find someone in the woods, no matter where you are, or the desert or whatever, they're going to ask those same things. Hey, are you okay? Do you need help? Should we take you with us? That is common across every culture, whether you're in the middle of the Amazon wearing nothing, or whether you're in New York City wearing a Rolex. For the most part, compassion is human, and humanoid too. So that you can expect, I think.
Derek said, here's your prompt, crap people.
I'm not saying mutants aren't possible. That's possible.
One of their funeral rites, like, again, it would vary by it would vary by culture. I mean, at the burial wasn't actually a very common thing in early civilization. More often than not, they would have just something called burials, allow an animal. They would allow them to, or they would burn them upon a pyre. Forms of. I don't want to. We're gonna skim a few of these. Sorry, I don't mean to, like, jump over them, but I want to make sure we get as many in.
Could literally talk about this for another 5 hours,
We
folks,
could.
but no one will have the stamina to get through that.
Uh,
Least of all us.
blood cavity. That's mad. Yeah, no, blood cavities are cool.
There is one thing I did want to very briefly touch on with the funeral rites too. I feel like
Sure.
every time one of these things comes up, there has to be a caveat, comma, magic people. And I think with funeral rites for mages, they will probably differ, if only because depending on the mage, they might literally be the equivalent of magical fallout. Who knows what happens when a mage dies? What their magic does when it's not tethered to
They
a
could
thinking,
literally
willful
supernova.
person.
They could just implode and like suck
They
a
could
bunch
turn to
of shit in.
toxic waste. They could literally be radioactive. Like, who knows? So I imagine at least when it comes to mages, each region probably has a specific funerary rite, and it is probably inherently practical, or at least partly practical, from like an understanding of dangerous goods disposed with caution.
They're probably put into like a very special thing if they're going to die, if they can help.
Yeah.
But we don't.
Or like what's it called again? Judge Dredd, The Long Walk, where they're like, if you're gonna die, do it 30 kilometers that way away from the city, please.
It could also be like Death Stranding. You know, deaths
Yeah.
could have a horrible effect. That's why they try to keep as many people alive. They try to keep tabs on absolutely everybody because they don't want another event that wipes out most of humanity.
30-meter crater. Yeah, exactly.
Bond said if there's a lot of oxygen, bugs are definitely going to be bigger. Hell of rad. Have you seen the things in the? Yes, they're.
Let's see. It looks like the next prompt is changes to the environment. Yeah, I think we're both on the same one. Response to change the environment again. Oh, yeah, let's see.
Not necessarily a prompt, but it is a good point.
Oh, but it's cool. Yeah, exactly. And also for the record, Emerly is actually that's actually Gemma from Twitter, for those of you guys who don't know, who is an awesome scientist and way more qualified than I am at all to talk on any of these topics.
We definitely need to get her on the show when we're talking about stuff like this.
And if anyone out there is looking to get a consult from someone who is scientifically literate and they need help building their world, especially if they're science fiction, or even if they're magic with a little bit of science mixed in, or science-derived logic, seriously, look up Gemma. Just trust me. She'll do you right.
Genuinely a great person to talk.
Straight up. Absolutely lifts my soul every time we chat.
Honestly, can we please have less difficult birthing? Like no periods if we don't want it.
Oh yeah, we're onto the evolutionary thing where we were like, we're self-selecting, and I was like, oh right, yeah, we're self-selecting for narrower hips, narrow hip structures. Yeah.
Giraffes. Yeah, giraffes are very reminiscent of those not herbivores. Dinosaurs. Thought you could outsmart me, tree? Ha, I just grow bigger. I just get taller.
So I'm actually looking at this. This is an interesting one. Oh, and also Bon, Do Bell to Do is stuck in my head. Good song. The Chemical Workers song, for anyone else who's interested. Seriously, a great chanty. Wolves raised nomadic warrior tribes focused on family, education, and defense, but willing to hire themselves out as soldiers. If fighting, they will minimize loss of life on all sides as much as possible while still achieving the objective. That is exactly the kind of thing that I was thinking of, is like you have mages, anti-mages, and then other. And this would qualify under other, is groups that would operate outside of the magical divide, because maybe not all nations want to. Maybe the same nation doesn't want to send a mage to every battle.
True.
Maybe it's pure overkill and the thing they don't want. If you're going to go and try to convince a town to join your nation, maybe don't send the walking death threat in with your...
That might be a good idea. You're welcome, Hannah. You want to hear the combo of a Die Hard watch night? Okay, I'm sorry if I missed you. Have a good night. If you're still here, I'm sorry. Die Hard. Never seen Die Hard. Never seen Home Alone. I'm horrible.
No, you're not. Honestly, they're the same. They're the same movie. Just one's with a PG-13 rating, a rated R movie. There you go.
Send me dimensions for that. Good to use. I appreciate that. I'll send you the dimensions. Actually, Omni, could you send them the dimensions for the ads? Kira's asking.
Yeah, sure. No problem. I'll send them to him.
Weight from muscle can be worn differently on different frames. Absolutely. Barrel chested is a thing because being really super fit doesn't look like a teeny tiny baby when they turn sideways. I mean, I got a barrel chest. I know the feeling. I got a very broad and big chest. I'm not super muscular, but I'm sort of like naturally built. I mean, my broad
Oh
shoulders.
yeah, no. Same. I'm not like I'm slender. My strength is entirely like I'm pretty strong, but I'm strong in that way of like I have surprisingly good endurance. I'm not like built like a brick. I'm not built like a brick shit house. Is the phrase we got.
I am. I'm a Celt, so like
Yeah.
naturally I'm 6'3" and like meat man. Like
Yeah. What's the phrase? Most people are built like hourglasses, but Celts are built like bricks.
Absolutely.
But yeah, like, and for the record, like, if you want to see the most physically imposing humans who have ever existed, look up like Olympic weightlifters and shot putters.
And those
Like,
people, some people call them fat. No,
they're not.
They
No,
have
no.
they have a layer of fat over their muscles to protect them. That's a very very specific way of weight training. It's very difficult, very very consuming on the body and the mind. Those people are they can deadlift like 100 pounds each. Like
If you punched, like, if you went up to a shot putter, like one of those Olympic level shot putters,
yeah,
and you punched them in the stomach, you have a better chance of breaking your hand than hurting them. Straight up.
they
They're
basically
like,
have like a healthy hernia. Like that's how hard their guts are.
yeah, there's a reason why heavy weightlifters wear those big belts. It's to keep them from herniating all their guts out when they're lifting the weight of a small car. And that is why they're built that way. They are literally built to have their core strength. And your core isn't in your chest, it's not your pectorals, as much as we all wish they were. It's not your pectorals, it's your abdomen.
Yeah.
And where's your abdomen? Your stomach. And where it happens to a muscle when you use it a lot? It gets swole, which means you get a big belly. Which
It's like
means
Thor from the new God of War Ragnarok. People are like, "Oh, he's fat." Like, oh, he's
no, that man's a rock of a human.
That-
Like it's the mountain from Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Like the strongest people on Earth, they don't look like supermodels. With like those folks who weight train in order to become the like the superposing models. Those guys.
That's a very specific, different.
That's
kind of
bodybuilding. They're sculpting their body, but they're not sculpting their body to be used. They're sculpting it to be aesthetic. They might have strength, but it's a what's the word? It's a parallel result.
Yeah.
It's not actually because of their work, or it's not because that's the goal. The goal is to look good. The fact that they get strength is just a happenstance. Whereas these other folks, they're not interested in looking good. They're interested in being effective. That is peak human right there. That is 200% human.
Peak human performance is what we're calling it.
Yeah, it's built like a brick, is what it is. That's what it is.
Juan said turning things to glass must be great for the window business. I think that's what we're talking about. Mages just
Oh,
turning
yeah.
things into glass. We're cutting out.
I imagine that'd be pretty good, yeah.
Myth Inc. series has a dimension that determines things through. It gives me Hunger Games vibes.
And there's plenty of historical. I mean, that is literally like the basis of the modern Olympics. This is a way for nations to compete, politically, but outside of war, militarily, and a means that is not as directly threatening. It's a way to encourage international community by encouraging them to share culture, by encouraging them to be competitive, which normally a nation state only does at the edge of a knife or at the edge of an embargo, neither of which are good for human life. So if you can encourage two nations that will kill each other on sight to send people to a place where the worst thing they're going to do is wrestle each other naked in oil, okay then, well, you probably established the basis for peace.
Yeah, good luck doing that. Getting everybody to sit down and sing Kumbaya. It's just us as humans, we are creatures of conflict. If we do not have conflict, we will. That is how we are. I think I'm not a philosopher, and I'm certainly not anybody qualified to give mental advice or anything like that. But I think that's why so many people nowadays have depression, especially with we have not simple problems like, oh, I got to go to, oh, I got to do. Yeah, that's a chore that sucks because like that stuff is relative. It's just like, oh, rich people have it so easy, blah blah blah. Yes, but rich people also, in their minds, their problems are relative. As much as I don't, a lot of really rich people aren't good people. Their problems are relative to them. If they were to drop down to like dirt poor, they'd sort of have an problems relative to dirt poor. But
everyone's problems, I think it is important to establish, and I try my best to say this in Legacy, I try my best to say this here, is that your experience, your personal experience, is valid. That is never an issue that needs to be debated. If you feel sad, you feel sad, and you don't need to justify your sorrow or your anger or your fear or your life experience to others to see if it's valid. What matters, exactly, what matters is what you do with it and how it impacts others. That's where you start running into issues of, I'm hurt and I'll hurt someone else in exchange. Or I'm hurt and I won't take care of what I need to get done, and as a result I will hurt others. Or I'm hurt, or someone else I know is hurting, and I have the capacity to help, but I won't. This is where problems arise. So if you're out there wondering whether or not your life experience is worth talking about, or whether or not you personally should be ashamed of existing the way you do, maybe you should be ashamed of existing the way you do because of the way you act, but not ever because of the way you feel or the way you intrinsically are.
Oh, yeah.
Your actions determine a lot. And a lot more, I think, than who you have become through circumstance and the human condition we all share. That's my blast on that one.
Put that in your pipe and smoke.
Hell yeah. Preferably with some really good Mary Jane.
Hero's talking about the two majors. Yeah, compete.
Oh, yeah.
But that's a cool idea. I've seen a lot of that sort of thing.
It's not impossible in the setting. It would probably just be it's not the rule. Like, I could see like a pair of allies doing that easily, or even that could be the basis of a trade organization or something. So literally just like, hey, we hang out every year, we do this thing because the people in this region kind of did this thing, and we just decided to canonize it as like a national holiday between the three of us. And it just happens to be a really good place for us to establish trade relations and negotiate things and operate as a block.
Network.
Exactly. Straight up. Like, what is Twitter except an excuse to get to know people?
Why it's called social network.
Yeah.
Networking being the fundamental thing, changing thoughts, ideas with people, even if they're, like horrible thoughts. Still, technically.
Yeah.
Oh, Chuck joined the chat. He said,
Chuck.
Why the F not? If you're taking over places, why not just name it all after yourself?
I mean, straight up, kinda, yeah.
Leave it to the laymen and the peasants to figure out what the hell to do with this information. That's what I said.
I mean, and honestly, especially back in that era, especially back in the Roman era, where, yeah, sure, you could walk the highway all the way to Britain if you wanted, if you're willing to take the ferry across.
Absolutely.
But, man, will you? Will you really? Will you take a walk that might literally take you years to complete? It's not like now where I can get an Amtrak and go see the beautiful Grand Canyon. With that level of walking, nah, dog, I'll see that in maybe a decade. And same thing in this setting. This is a setting where a lot of those infrastructure things have broken down. So, like, yeah, no, it actually it's perfectly logical from that standpoint to say if the average person will live their entire life within maybe 100 miles of the place they're born, of every 100 miles, naming a city after yourself, just so they know who's got the score.
I want you to know that this is my place. I came, I saw, I conquered, and then I got stabbed 50 times.
Yeah.
And then I said that too, Brute. I'm sorry, folks. I missed a lot of the chat. I'm going to have to skim a little bit. Sorry. Bonbon made a point that said, not to mention there is still actual evidence of our gene pool is still suffering from the Great Depression. Yeah, I mean, I'd believe it. Especially from, like, famine and a lot of the issues that we... I'm sure. I think a lot of mental will pass, honestly. Why wouldn't it?
I mean, everything is genetic to a degree. Like, there's a certain point where almost everything can be traced to a degree from genetics. Even experiences, physical experiences, impact your genetic structure. Fun fact. So, like, one of the things that I did enjoy learning is the fact that your fingerprints actually, even if you were to have if you have a perfect twin, of yourself, a perfect genetically identical twin at birth. By the time you both go to the grave, you will not be genetically identical anymore. You will have distinct cancers and modifications and genetic damage. Even your fingerprints will change with use and damage. Like, your fingerprints will literally develop differently. So, yeah, no, everything can be tracked through the physical, I think, is a fair assessment.
We're gonna do...
Also, for the record, Neris is actually, like, something of... Neris actually has experience in the medical field. So, like, when Neris opens her mouth and contributes something, I'm watching, because that is relevant AF. So...
Absolutely. If we have an expert in a field, I would definitely love to have their opinions on stuff like that. Especially, like, people like Gemma talking about sciences. I'm very ignorant when it comes to stems. I just know I know bits and bobs.
Yeah. Also, DMDM with the quote, Celts just needed to run fast enough to get close to the battlefield to get those goddamn Anglos off their land.
Okay, so this could actually be something we could draw into the thing that Kira's talking about, sort of having like a hunter-gatherer sort of situation or civilization on the outside of these other like rising civilizations. Because civilization, I don't think you have, erect edifices around a place to have it called a civilization. Anywhere where a group of people agree set of rules, follows them, blah blah. So the Celts. So
civilization is literally two people eating dinner together. That's a civilization. That's the start.
Because you have unspoken and you have spoken rules.
Yeah.
But Derek was talking about the Celts running at the end, trying to get the end. Yeah. The Celts did something very weird. So especially the Irish, what they would do is they scared the hell out of the Romans, because the Irish had giant shields like the Romans did, and they had spears, and they did formations like phalanx and hurdle and stuff like that. These primitive people, by Roman standards, were using the same tactics that they were. That is why Rome never got as far as Ireland and Scotland, because they were fought off by these savages that they recorded down in history. One of the few times Rome would actually admit defeat to a group of people like that, especially a native group of people considered simple. The Celts were very good tacticians. Why do you think it took Britain so long to finally conquer, quote unquote, Ireland? They never really did. Just
treaty organization, basically. Yeah. And also a similar point, and this is a fun story. So, for those of you who don't know, the city of London is a very unique place in Britain for a very similar reason. London used to be a Roman outpost known as Londinium, and so when no, you good. So let's see. Oh, take care, Bond. Love you. Mwah. So good night, girlfriend. So the London itself, or Londinium, used to be a Roman outpost. And so when the Great Conquest of England occurred, and basically you had our lovely famed king riding across it, basically turning it into a personal fiefdom for himself. He came across this one city with a surprisingly strong wall structure and really well-made defenses made for a long-term siege. And so he and his cavalry sort of pulled up in front and were like, hey, we're conquering this lovely little island for ourselves. Would you like to join us, or would you like us to put you to the sword? And the Londonians were like, I'd like to see you try, bitch. And so they were like, okay, sure, let's try. And a siege literally so long that neither side wanted to be there later, and London was still doing fine, but couldn't trade and couldn't leave their city. And the people outside were literally getting so tired and so out of resources, they had to start pillaging the countryside around London. They were like, okay, you know what? Fine. We'll make a deal. We won't conquer you. You will maintain autonomy, and you will be your own sub-state within this nation. But you have to let us pass, and you can't resist us. And they were like, cool. You're going to need to ask permission to come in every single time you do, though. And so he was like, at the time, the king was like, that's really demeaning and annoying, but sure, fine. And that is the reason why, to this day, when the Queen of England wants to go to London, she needs express permission from the Mayor of London, because London, to this day, technically does not answer to the British Crown. It has its own semi-autonomous region, and that is why the mayor is the Lord Mayor. He's not the Lord Mayor because he was made a lord by the Queen. He is his own authority. And so, historically speaking, the one exception to any empire is just having the right secret sauce to throw their thing out of whack. That's basically it. If you have a big enough wall that they can't, if you have a big enough wall and big enough supplies that they can't effectively besiege you, they're going to negotiate with you. If you're a nomadic culture that can't be pinned down, well, as opposed to chasing you all over the place, they're probably just going to negotiate with you. If you're organized enough and skilled enough warriors, they will negotiate with you. That is the trick to surviving history right there. Sounds like the City of Blood from the Dark Tower. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's based on London for that reason. So, yeah. They say I just love potatoes. The Romans didn't get us.
Romans didn't. So we are actually right at 10 o'clock, so I think this is a good stopping point for the evening, because we do have a show tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that show will run exactly to 10 o'clock, because we have a guest that needs 10 minutes exactly. But that's no big deal. Just run till 10 like we planned on doing anyway. So I've been your host at VA Redemption on Twitter. I'm just Redemption, I believe. Redemption VA on Twitch. Can't change my handle. Frickin' church took my Twitter handle off. So, like I said, I've been Redemption. Omni.
I'm the Last Omnitect, your favorite robot American, and you can find me on Twitter literally at the Last Omnitect, all one word. You can find me on Twitch at the Last Omnitect. You can find me on Instagram at the Last Omnitect. I keep the handle pretty tight, and there's a reason it's there, and it's that long. You guys can spot me online. I'll be working on Legacy and the demo and hopefully get that done over the course of the next couple of weeks. I've been really grinding this out, folks. It is just such a huge endeavor. I thank you for your patience and your interest. And I'm really happy to be here and building worlds again. And, yeah. Guess that's been a chip off the block, huh?
It has. I honestly really like this show. I hope you folks like the tangential nature of it. I like it. It's a little bit more of a freeform show compared to the prompts and the words that we're usually going to covering. Nara says, thank you for the cool stream. Thank you for coming here and being cool during said stream. We appreciate you.
Heck yeah.
But yeah, I'm trying to think of... I don't think I'm going to do shout-outs tonight. I think I'll shout out Derek from DMDM Studios. He's amazing. He knows he's amazing. And listen to you guys talk all day. Thank you. I love to hear it.
Same buddy.
Shout out to Coin for just being a great dude and a great artist.
And Coin also having a one-shot this Saturday of Starfinder.
You're on that.
I am on that, so you guys can catch me there. I'll be tomorrow on this show, and then on Saturday on Coin or on DMDM with Coin as a GM and Starfinder. I'm sort of piecing my character together. No spoilers, but I think you're going to enjoy them.
You're also going to be on Call of Cthulhu on Saturday as well.
Yeah,
you're going to be a busy man. I hope you're not burnt out by then.
Oh, no. And besides, it's Call of Cthulhu. It's good to be burned out. It's realistic to the character. So you guys, I think that's pretty much it. Have a good one, folks. Take care.
See you tomorrow. Same exact time for Writer's Block. I think you'll like our guests. You'll like every single one of our great people. I'll see you, folks. Thanks for stopping by.
Peace.